around. All right? This is a biggie. This is one of those court cases you need to know. This is another one if you get that question about what started the Civil War. Okay, a couple of things to write down. And guys, please remember this, because I'm hoping and praying one day you'll get this question. If you do, you guys will knock it out of the park. All right? And the reason is because you're looking from this perspective. Okay. Always remember this. Always remember this. The issue of slavery in America before the Civil War was never about the institution. Guys, that's a big deal. It's never about the institution. It's about the spread of that institution. That's what's important. Nail that into your brain. Okay? Because when you talk about spreading slavery, you're talking three-fifths compromise and you're talking politics. Okay? So that's what's important about this. That's why this is such a big deal. The issue that caused all the problem, the issue that caused secession, was the spread of slavery and federal attempts to restrict it. Guys, the federal government, when you look at Missouri Compromise, Compromise of 1850, that is a policy of containment. They're trying to contain slavery, okay? So, the reason this is important is this. The Supreme Court is going to rule that because slaves are property, because they belong to their white masters, they can be taken anywhere in the United States, Congress cannot stop it. That's a big deal, because that, more than anything else, is why we fought the Civil War. Okay? It involves both the spread of slavery and states' rights. Okay? So if you had to make that argument, that's the one thing that supports both sides. Slavery is the issue. The spread of slavery is the issue. But what states can do to control it or spread it is what was solved there. The things about Dred Scott that's important as far as African American history goes. Dred Scott rules that slaves are things and they have no rights. That's important. For the first time, it is a federal law, a national law, that slaves are things. Okay? In the word of Justice Taney, slaves have no rights a white man is bound to respect. Okay? So slaves are things. They're property. And the second thing is, according to the Constitution, a citizen can take their property anywhere they want to, and the government cannot prevent it. Okay? That's important. So look what you've got here now. You've got a ruling that says Missouri Compromise, null and void. Compromise 1850, null and void. Every single federal law that's ever been passed about controlling the spread of slavery, null and void. Okay? That's what this does. That's what opens the floodgates. Okay, so everybody good so far. Guys, when you're talking African American history, the big pivot, the big turning point in African American history is when they're freed from slavery. Okay? So if you have to write any essay discussing African American history, this has got to be part of it. Okay, so everybody good so far? Bye, Jazz. Jazz, you got a reading packet, right?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. All right. Guys, this is something else that's important. Okay? This is something that if you had this essay, this will knock it out of the park. Okay, and this is all the results of new research that's happened in the past couple of years. Okay, when you talk about the Emancipation Proclamation, know what it is. Okay, know what it is. Don't know the elementary, middle school definition of this. Know what it is. Okay, know what it is from a college perspective. First of all, Lincoln wants to free the slaves. He wants to free the slaves, but he's faced with the same issue. How do I do it? Lincoln is a free soiler, okay? And Lincoln is a member, a card-carrying member of the American Colonization Society. So when the summer of 1862 rolls around, Abraham Lincoln's losing the war. He's losing the war, okay? So he sits down with his cabinet and says, you know, I want to free the slaves. We've got to get this issue of slavery off the table. If we take the issue of slavery off the table, maybe we can reach a peace agreement with the Confederacy. Maybe we can reunite. So he first comes up with a preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. And what he proposed to do is just what we talked about. He wants to sit here and give Southern slave owners money, take their slaves, and relocate them somewhere outside the country. Okay? Not just Liberia, other places. Haiti, for one. Okay? Places in Central America. So the first Emancipation Proclamation carried with it, we're going to free the slaves, we're going to compensate their owners, and then we're going to colonize them. That was written in September 1862. That's the one that stayed in place for a long time, okay? The Battle of Antietam is won, and now he feels comfortable that he has a military victory, that he has credibility for his Emancipation Proclamation. Then he goes before Congress in December, and they're discussing the issue of slavery, okay? And when he talks to Congress, he says the same thing, except this is what he says. This is going to be gradual emancipation. We're going to give Southerners until the year 1901 to free their slaves. And we're going to compensate them, and we're going to sit here and colonize them. Okay? Everybody good so far? All right. What Lincoln did not tell Congress, or anybody for that matter, is he had signed a series of agreements with the British. The British were going to take these colonized slaves. They were going to take them down to Chiquiri in Panama, at Darien in Panama, in Nicaragua. They were going to sit here and develop those areas, because remember, the British had an interest down there. They're going to develop them as plantation economy, make money, and they're going to start digging a canal. Okay? So Lincoln already had this implanted in motion. That's what's new about this issue. These records in the British Public Record Office prove this. Okay? So that's what he wanted to do. Here's the problem. Congress ain't going to give it to him. By this time of the war, those radical Republicans are starting to raise their ugly heads. Okay? And they are not going to give him colonization and compensation. So Lincoln knows that if I want to sit here and use slavery as an issue in this war, it can't be accompanied by compensation and colonization. There's got to be something else. Always remember this if you talk about this. He's losing the war. When you lose the war, people quit enlisting. He's losing manpower. Okay? He's got to have soldiers to fill the ranks. So when he finally issues the final draft of the Emancipation Proclamation, there is no compensation, there is no colonization. What it does say is these freed slaves will be put into the U.S. Army. Okay, so that's the evolution of this thing. Okay, its original intent was not to put slaves in the army. That was a practical matter because Lincoln needed soldiers. Okay, everybody good so far? Understand, because guys, this tells you a lot about the public perception of slavery. The one thing you see missing in this whole thing right here, where's the morality? Where are people concerned about the welfare of a bunch of people who've been enslaved since 1500? And that's the whole point. The point of this is what's not there. Okay? You see political issues here. Okay? You see economic issues, but there's not a moral issue in sight. Okay? Is everybody kind of with me so far? Okay? That's the important thing. Okay? The amendments, the Civil War amendments. If you start to learn your amendments, okay, the easy way to remember these is they follow a logic order. Okay? The 13th Amendment is going to abolish slavery in the United States. Okay? So the 13th Amendment will abolish slavery. Now you've got 4 million former slaves. Okay? Well, the next thing is, you look back at Dred Scott. Dred Scott says that these people have no rights. They're things, not citizens. So you've got to overturn the Dred Scott Amendment. Okay? And the way you do that, the Dred Scott decision, the way you do that is with the 14th Amendment. So the first thing about the 14th, it overturns Dred Scott. Now they are citizens. Dred Scott makes them, the 14th Amendment will make them citizens. That gives them equal protection under law. Okay. Now, radical Republicans in Congress. 4 million people who were former slaves, 4 million brand new citizens. What is the interest of the radical Republicans of those 4 million people? Votes. That's what the 15th does. The 15th gives them the right to vote. So there's a logic progression here. Free them, make them citizens, give them the vote. Okay? There is a political intention here. Because, guys, remember, the radical Republicans, all they wanted was that 4 million strong voting bloc. These 3 amendments will give that to them. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay? Something else about the 15th Amendment. Women are not happy by any stretch of the imagination. Women are saying, wait a minute. Okay, you're telling me that former slaves, most of whom who are illiterate, can vote? We can't. So this is going to re-energize the women's movement. When we go to the women's movement here, we'll see that. It's going to re-energize them. It's going to build a fire under the suffragette movement. Women want two things. They want temperance and they want the right to vote. Those two issues will be what guides them throughout the rest of the century, into the second decade of the 20th century. Okay, everybody good? Okay, you've heard these things before. Just because the slaves are freed in the South doesn't mean they have equality. Guys, there is a difference between freedom and equality. If you remember that in that reading that you saw, it said they had their freedom, but that's all they've got. That was a result of the 13th Amendment. They're free, but they are living in absolute hell because the people they were freed from don't like them and want to return them to a status of second-grade citizenship. That's what the black codes do, okay? Guys, the black codes are going to make sure that slaves, quote unquote, know their place. Okay? If you're a slave, you better be out of sight by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't let me catch you carrying a weapon. Don't even think about coming to court and testifying against a white person. And don't even entertain this weird concept that you actually can go down to the courthouse and vote in an election. Okay? So what it's going to do is going to try to keep them as close to second-class citizenship as they can. Okay? This includes efforts to keep them from voting. Okay? Who's going to enforce the black codes? They're illegal. Who's going to enforce it? The Klan. The Klan. Okay. This is going to be and not just former slaves, but also whites in the South. This will be the predominant economic situation more than anything else. Okay? You're going to have sharecropping, crop liens, and tenant farming. Simply put, because God, remember the pyramid. When the war breaks out, the majority of whites are poor. Okay? They don't have anything. So whites are going to be caught in this thing like everybody else. The reason that the South stayed poor for so long is this is a stagnant system. When you get caught in this crop lien system, things like this perpetual debt slavery and everything, you can't escape it. If you're a sharecropper, you can't escape it. Okay? So this is what's going to drag the South down. Meanwhile, those people on top of the pyramid that were former slave owners, okay, they're coming back to power. These are the Bourbons, okay? This is a biggie, okay? The Compromise of 1877 is going to end Reconstruction. This is when the Democrats agree to let Rutherford B. Hayes win the election, and the payback is going to be he ends military Reconstruction in the South. If you write anything about African American history, this has got to be in there. And remember, this is when their lives turned to living hell. It was not good before. It was not good under slavery. It was not good before 1876. It's going to be living hell now. Because, guys, the only thing that made Reconstruction even halfway work was the fact that troops in the South would protect blacks voting. They would escort them to the polls. When those troops are gone, it's open season on former slaves. Okay? And you have the Knights of the White Camellia, the Ku Klux Klan, the White League, okay? And they're going to do everything they can to punish slaves for the unpardonable sin of being free. Okay, is everybody with me so far? Okay? Okay, we're going to take care of this and then we'll be finished. All right? Late 1800s, all right? The black codes are still there. Okay, I don't know why I put them there twice. Okay? Here we go. Jim Crow, Big E. Jim Crow is going to kind of pick up where the black codes left off. The black codes are going to be focusing on making sure that African Americans stay in a certain social status. The Jim Crow laws is going to be all about segregation and discrimination. In other words, Jim Crow laws say there are two races. They're separated. They need to stay that way. So Jim Crow laws is going to make sure that the races do not mix. This is when you've seen those famous photographs of a white drinking fountain and a black drinking fountain, or colored drinking fountain. That's what the Jim Crow laws said. The Jim Crow laws were based in the common perception, okay, that it's dangerous to mix the races. That's a perception that Lincoln held. That's one reason why Lincoln believed in colonization. Most whites lived in total fear of the power of African Americans. And the reason is they remembered Haiti. They remember the fact that if you are a former slave, that you've got a built-in agenda. Okay, you got built-in motivation. So rather than sit here and poke the bear by mixing the races, why don't we all just separate? Okay? Whites felt that way, and a lot of blacks did too. A lot of blacks didn't want to have anything to do with white culture. It was something foreign to them. And if you're black, why would you want to go involve yourself in a culture that hates your guts and goes out of its way to hate your guts? Okay? These are extremely important Jim Crow laws. Guys, remember we talked about the Dixiecrats in 1948 in the election? The Dixiecrats were wed to these things. The reason they were Dixiecrats is they wanted to preserve segregation. Okay? All right. This guy's important. In fact, we were talking about civil rights today, Ms. Hanson and I were and everything. When you start to get to the 1950s, we're going to talk about this on Tuesday, you start to see two civil rights organizations. One is called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It was founded by Dr. Martin Luther King. Okay? He believed in nonviolent protest. The other one is called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, known as SNCC. Okay? They started out nonviolent. As the years went on, there were young people. They got violent. They are the logical evolution of this guy and W.B. Du Bois. Booker T. Washington said, you got to face reality. Face the fact. They don't like us. They don't like us now. It's going to take generations for us to be accepted. Okay? So, if it's going to happen that way, we can't enjoy equality and respect unless the white man does it on his terms. We can't force ourselves on them. It's just going to cause resentment. So, what are the white man's terms? The white man sees black and the white man sees white, but everybody sees green. So what he realized is when African Americans become an economic entity, okay, then the white man will accept them. And that is incredibly shallow, okay, but it's true. It's true. So that's what Washington said. Sit back, be patient, make yourself an economic force, okay? They will come to you if you do that, okay? Here's the downside of that. Be prepared to put up with racism. That's who they are, okay? So again, you have to accommodate their racism. Put up with it until the point they decide they want you part of your culture. That was called accommodation, okay? So that's what Washington's saying. Nonviolent protest, bide your time, wait, put up with the racism. One day they will welcome you in. And guys, we know today that he was right. Because if you look at economics today, Oprah Winfrey could own the country. Okay? You have a lot of major black entrepreneurs. How do you say that word?
Entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs. I can't say it. I swear to God, every year I just butcher that thing. Okay? Anyway, if you look across the country, look at Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, LeBron James. Okay? They're all African Americans, and the reason people honor and respect them is because they're wealthy African Americans. If LeBron James couldn't play basketball, who would care about it? Okay? So this guy's right. America accepts these people on America's terms. Then you got this guy. Okay? Du Bois says, stay in their face. They're the ones that enslaved us all those years. We don't owe them anything. We have beaten, abused, and oppressed for 200 years. Now it's our turn. So when you see the white man, get up in his face and never let him forget that he enslaved us. He likened it to having a rock in your shoe. Okay? African Americans need to be the rock. Every time he takes a step, he needs to feel it, and it needs to hurt. So this is called senseless agitation. He was a huge critic of Washington. He told people that if we do what Booker T. Washington says, we're just going back. We're not going forward. So the aggressive nature of African Americans in the late 1800s will come from Du Bois. The passive nature will come from Washington. The civil rights movement will have both. Okay, you'll have people believing in nonviolence. You have people believing in violence. Okay, so the civil rights movement, when it starts in the late 1800s, will be a dual entity. Okay, the problem is nobody knows what works yet. It's going to take years to figure that out. Okay, is everybody good so far? Okay, last one. Throughout the 1800s, Americans are struggling with racism. Okay, Americans don't know how to accept former slaves. What they do know about them, they learned in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Okay? They see every slave as being a character in that book, every former black person. Okay? They see them being illiterate. They see them being almost childlike. Okay? And when they see that, that means there's no way you can respect these people. All right? So this issue of separating the races gathers steam in popular culture. It will come to a head with Plessy versus Ferguson. This is the guy in New Orleans that tried to ride the train to Lafayette. And he was told he had to sit in the black car. And he said you can't do that because you can't tell if I'm white or not. The case goes to the Supreme Court. Listen carefully, it's important, okay? This court case will establish the legal principle of separate but equal. Guys, this is going to legalize segregation. It's going. I mean, we're talking federal law here. It is a federal law that you can segregate the races. You can put the races in anywhere you want to as long as the facilities are of equal quality. Okay? So Plessy versus Ferguson is going to legalize segregation. It says you can separate the races as long as the facilities, whether it be rail cars, buses, schools, hospital, as long as they're of equal quality, it's okay to separate the races. Okay? Here's the major flaw in it. The major flaw. Okay? What does equal mean? Exactly what is equal? Okay? And because they did not define what equal is, it will be abused like nobody's business. When we talk about sweat versus painter next week, is an example of it. Okay, anybody? Good so far. I think we ought to go home for Easter.
Yep.